Excellent. Recording is in progress as well. So welcome to our hybrid meeting. As you know, the voting members that we have here physically are Peter, Fabian, Terry, and David. And we will be using a consensus approach, as I discussed, on the items that are before us today. We're also joined today by a member of the press, Noah, who's come to find out some of the exciting stuff that our meeting is going to be looking at today. And I will start on item 1, which is the minutes of the last meeting. Could anyone please indicate if they wish to speak on the minutes of the last meeting, or otherwise do thumbs up to show your approval or otherwise of those minutes? I see lots of thumbs up. I see no thumbs down, in which case I am going to take those as approved. Thank you very much. Ruth, are you able to tell us apologies and substitutes?
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Martin and Councillor Turner, and we have Councillor Wilkinson as substitute for Councillor Turner.
Thank you very much. And I should say, as a piece of housekeeping, if you could only unmute when I tell you to, because I have to play around with the microphone slightly sometimes. Item 3 is Chairman's announcements. I have none. Item 4 is items of urgent business. I am not aware of any. Item 5 is declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest they want to bring to the attention of the committee? I see none. Item 6 is non-members wishing to address the meeting. Are there any non-members present who would like to address the meeting outside of any of the items that we have on the agenda? Again, I see none, which takes us to item 7, which is the customer service review. I will invite, Mark, are you going to be speaking on this, or is you? Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to bring to you this morning the Customer Service Review Report, approval to proceed with the implementation of the structural changes to the customer services team following the service review that has taken place. This new structure supports the Council's approved customer access strategy, delivering channel choice as well as channel shift. It will enable the call centre to remain remote working and the team to feel fully supported by the Council in their day-to-day roles. You will note within the report pack that the roles and scope of service review are presented only within the structure chart, and this is to enable the sharing of the full report to be as transparent as possible. At this point, I would like to hand over to Adele for a quick presentation which will take you through the report.
Thank you, Mark. So I'll just share my screen with you. Are you able to confirm that you can see that okay? Okay, so prior to COVID, our service review.
Adele, sorry, just to cut in,
sorry.
We've got the notes, etc. on screen as well. That's a bit I can see, so okay. Need to go to presentation.
Apologies.
Thanks.
Is that better?
Perfect, thanks.
Brilliant, thank you, Jason. So just a quick reminder of where we've come from. Prior to COVID, our service review aimed at driving the delivery of customer access strategy was put on pause along with all non-critical service and projects. At this point, the team were office-based with a culture focused on customer excellence, but with some challenges around performance and demand management. During COVID, customers have been forced to contact us in different ways, thereby accelerating channel shift and some of the future changes we'd intended to implement. Within a matter of weeks, the customer contact became a virtual call centre, able to operate anywhere with new tech. Some channels were switched off, our face-to-face services, and others were reduced and refocused on the Council's COVID response. As part of our COVID response and recovery planning, we've reviewed how our customer service has changed in response to the challenges of the COVID pandemic, how we've had to change the way that we work, what we've learned from this, and what we might want to do differently in the future based on this learning. We think we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change how our customers interact with us as a council, and to support these changes, We need a team structure and ways of working that will enable the team to effectively manage changing demand and optimise its productivity. So with a customer experience manager in place, a full review of the customer services has taken place, and a new structure is proposed that aims to create senior leadership capacity to drive a high-performing culture focused on productivity, as well as customer experience, improve the use of customer insight to manage demand and reduce avoidable contacts and failure demand. Embed customer excellence across the council through closer working relationships with other council services, increase the digital access to services for customers through artificial intelligence, social media, web chat and assisted service. We'd like to attract high and retain high caliber staff by offering greater career progression opportunities, helping our customer access officers achieve their full potential by creating more one-to-one support and clearer reporting lines, providing targeted training and development opportunities by creating a lead role that will include the responsibility for learning and development. So what does this mean for our customers? Our customers have been on a journey with us through the coronavirus pandemic and have adapted by necessity to the changes that we're encouraging through our customer access strategy. This new structure, together with our plans to introduce more automation through artificial intelligence, will help us continue to take them along that journey. For our customers with online access, support will be available to them any time of the day via our digital assistant, which will initially be available on our website 24/7. For customers who prefer to contact us by phone, but are still comfortable to self-serve, we'll be able to support them at any time of the day via our digital assistant, which is planned to be available from early 2022. For customers who want to talk to an officer over the phone, we can support them with on the phone between 9 and 5, or where more appropriate, offer a pre-booked telephone appointment at a more convenient time. For customers who can't access online services or who struggle to contact us during office hours, we can support them with some dedicated evening appointments. For customers who prefer to talk to an officer face-to-face, we can support them with video conference calls or alternatively arrange an appointment to see them face-to-face. So as you can see from the current structure, it's very flat and without any clear reporting lines to the team leaders. It also offers little opportunity to progress and develop unless you're moving into the wider organisation, which creates some challenges in terms of recruitment and managing multiple secondments. The structure reflects the static Thetford team that we had in place pre-COVID. The Elizabeth House reception team are part of the wider pool of staff already available, as they can flex to meet both face-to-face and telephone demand. So the new structure offers greater leadership capacity with the creation of a new senior lead role and new support roles, both highlighted in green. The new senior lead role would be responsible for the day-to-day operations, team leader management, performance reporting, systems management, and ensuring the day-to-day service quality remains high. The new support roles would be deputising for the lead roles to provide management and phone demand resilience and to support with the development of our new digital assistant within the artificial intelligence project. Overall, there is a reduction of just under 4 FTE. This is enabled by a tailored rotating hours to better meet our customer demand, factoring in the reduction of the environmental services calls post-April 2021, which was part of the waste contract. The proposed structure allows capacity for the lead roles to consistently and effectively manage performance within their own teams, along with the senior lead who can be an active part in understanding customer demand. Led by the customer experience manager, the leadership team will work together to develop our new digital assistant functionality, part of the artificial intelligence project. With a senior lead role in place to manage the day-to-day operations, the customer experience manager will be supported to fulfil their more strategic brief of working with other council teams to redesign services around customer need, insight, to make sure they are both effective and efficient. The proposed structure is also designed to encourage a culture of high performance and excellent customer service by making sure the lead roles have the capacity and support to create a positive and productive working environment. By creating more leadership capacity, the service will be able to proactively support and quality assure customer communications to ensure they are clear, easy to understand and provided in a timely way. For the support roles, this includes taking on the responsibility for proactive and responsive management of service requests via social media, freeing up capacity within the corporate communications team to deal with more strategic tasks. So finances, the initial cost of the proposed customer access service is a decrease of 56,121. Currently, we are holding vacancies following the contact centre reduction in calls as they moved across as part of the new waste contract, enabling the service to meet its efficiency target of 80,000. Across years 22-23, there is a decrease in cost of 73,000, and in 23-24, a decrease of 64,891. These are accounting for inflation costs and incremental increase. The customer access service will need to remain under review as the artificial intelligence project progresses and we develop more efficient ways of working to meet the further efficiency targets set of an additional 70,000 in years 22-23 and 23-24. Totaling 150,000 each year, which will be realised by the review and AI. So the key milestones within this is we went into consultation with the staff 1st of March for 30 days. We're presenting to yourselves today. It's expected to go to full council on the 8th of July with a view to implementing the proposed new structure on the 19th of July. So thank you very much, everybody. Any questions? I'll just unshare.
Pulled me there, Adele, by shutting that early. Could I check first? I'm going to go to physical members first so that I can do the microphone all in one go, and then I'll go to remote members after that. Do any physical members wish to ask any questions or make any points? I've got Terry and Fabian, in which case we'll go to Terry first, please. Go ahead, Terry.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to ask about the AI system. There's a bit of narrative in one of the appendices that accompanies the report. Presumably there are costs involved in implementing that. So I just wondered if there was a bit of an overview as to some of the finances involved in that, so we can see a bit of a cost-benefit ratio. And I just wanted to ask about flexibility as well, because one of the concerns that we've probed at Scrutiny in the past is how there are often some very busy periods during the year when council tax bills are issued, that sort of thing. Is there enough flexibility built into this to deal with some of those sort of busier periods? Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Adele.
Thank you. So with regards to the AI cost benefit analysis, we can provide that outside of this meeting. There was a growth bid that would have accompanied that particular project. So I'm happy to provide that outside of this meeting. With regards to the flexibility to meet peaks in demand, the support roles, part of their role would be not just to support the leadership roles, but also the contact centre officer roles. So where we do see those really high peaks or unforeseen demand, we would then pull them onto whichever channel was showing that unforeseen demand. So that adds in that flexibility.
Terry, are you going to want to come back, or was that? Fabian, if you could ask your question as soon as I indicate. Go ahead.
My thought is not actually a question, it's just actually, I agree, I think it should go ahead. And with the COVID thing, speaking from previous experience on business lockdowns, you'll probably find your customers being far more sympathetic to any changes you're doing and giving yourselves some leniency when it's mistakes. But the one thing about COVID is now is the time to do these sort of things and quickly when people are more open to trying things new and doing it in a new way. So whereas perhaps previously, if you'd have done it 2 years ago, 18 months ago, you would have had more problems and creation. People are not being so happy about it, but they'll be more conducive to do it. So I think it's good, and like I said, now's the time to try and do the new things and go to a new way forward. You can.
Thank you, Fabian. I don't have any other physical members who want to ask questions at the moment. Could I see indications from remote members, please? I've got Tim, then Mark, then Hilary. If we start with Tim in 1 second, Tim. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick comment. The once in a lifetime comment I would say is be careful making that sort of statement. We've seen that. We've seen mistakes there before. Look, I've got 3 questions. Perhaps if I can put those all together and you can just think about answers collectively. So on the agenda pack 3.3 on page 13, it isn't clear in the pack that residents will always be able to talk to a real person without delay. And I just wonder whether we can have some clarity on that, because you've recognised that not everybody is as tech savvy and is going to be as familiar with this. But what we don't want, I suggest, is to be saying no contacts today or being excessively delayed. And we are already seeing very long delays in our current system. So second question is that the concept behind this seems to be predicated on the AI, but the report doesn't really give us any indication as to whether it works. What evidence have we got that we can actually deliver the performance through this AI? And I would, anybody that's actually used something like Alexa or Hey Google is going to know that these AI systems are relatively simple and easily defeated. And yet, what is it on 1.4? You're talking about an increase in complex calls. And I am concerned that the AI is not going to be able to cope with that. So I think we want to see some evidence that this actually will work. And then finally, third question is about data security. Because AI requires access to vast amounts of data to even stand a chance of working. So who is going to have that data? Who's going to have access to it? How are we going to ensure that it's secure? And any personal data that's being handled, is this going off-site to an AI company to assess what's going on? How do we maintain personal data? And I haven't watched this yet, but I understand there's a panorama program that might be worth looking at if anybody's inclined to have a little think about AI.
Thank you, Tim. Adele, do you want to tackle those 3 straightforward and easy questions?
Yes, so with regards to the service review and the AI, there are 2 phases. So this service review mainly is focused around creating that senior leadership capacity to support the team as best we can to remain a remote working environment and providing that customer service to our customers. The AI savings are not within the customer service review currently. That is proposed for future. So we are retaining some roles within the proposed structure to remain fixed term contracts to enable that to be reviewed again in the future. However, at the moment, this is focused on creating leadership capacity and changing the way that customers access us. So we do recognise as well that not every customer is going to want to just be speaking to an artificial intelligence person. So we have made sure within our requirements for our new provider that they would be handed off as soon as possible. So they'd have the option. So the customer would always have the option to talk to a live agent or an artificial intelligence agent, whoever it is they wish to speak to. And we wouldn't take that option away.
Thank you.
And data security?
Oh, I do apologise, Tim. Yeah, so data security, we're working with Kirsty around our GDPR. We're very aware of that within this new platform. And we're looking at, wherever possible, no data being stored within this new platform. That's one of the principles behind it.
Do you have any more information on the data storage at the moment in terms of, because obviously that was not 100%.
We don't have firm information about, we've got obviously our provider has data security, so they've gone through the procurement process to show that they have the data security certificates, but we are constantly working with our data protection officer to make sure we're doing all the things that we should be doing to mitigate or manage any kind of data security issues at all. So she's involved with the project all the way along. Oh, I think Jason.
1 second, Jason, I'll come to you. Just one supplementary, which is in the event of a data breach by the provider, would the liability fall on the provider or the council? I'll go to Adele and then I'll come to Jason.
I'd have to look into that for you. Sorry, I don't know the answer to that at the moment.
That's absolutely fine. Jason?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I wondered if, with portfolio holders' permission, Councillor Robinson, it might be worth us bringing AI into overview and scrutiny. That would then allow us to really provide clarity on Councillor Jeremy's and Councillor Burt's questions. We can look at the business case and the details behind it, whether it's cyber security. And in fact, I've been through a really good demo. I only saw a 15-minute demo of it, and I think it really brings it to life. And you should see it in other scenarios, other councils where it's worked, etc., as part of our due diligence to find who we believe is the right provider. So just put that on the table. Apologies for maybe talking for portfolio holder.
Thank you, Jason. Mark, is that agreeable? Would you be happy to bring an AI item back to scrutiny?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, Tim, do you have any further supplementaries?
Well, yes, please. Can I just make a comment? I don't think yet that the argument is made, especially on the basis that we're actually going to have more information about the AI. So I'm more inclined to hold fire at the moment, especially since approving this decision is the removal of 4 full-time posts. So I think we may be a bit premature. I'm inclined to vote against at the moment.
Thank you, Tim. That's noted. I'll deal with the voting at the end of the item. Mark, I think you were next, and then Hilary.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just have one question, really. Looking at the pro forma B, it appears that the savings in 22-23 are predicated on the AI working and going forward. Should there be something on the risk register to look at the way that AI is going to work, because that's a fairly big chunk of money that we're actually predicating on that working. So I don't know what members feel about that. I think it should be on the risk register.
Thank you, Mark. Adele, do you have any comments you want to make on Mark's point? Oh, Jason?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to add some clarity around those finances. So the pro forma B, there is further savings expected, totaling 150, which is both the service review is 80,000 per year. We're expecting to save through the service review, which is a direct result of the waste calls going across to Serco. So that's the drop in 4 FTE. And then there's a further 80,000, which is particularly tied around the artificial intelligence in the future years, and that being live and successful.
Thank you. Just before I go to Jason, and so to clarify, you're saying that the 4 FTE posts are not linked to the AI. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you. Jason, you had a point you wanted to make?
No, apologies. I think Adele has covered what I was going to raise. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, are you satisfied with those responses? We can come back on the risk register point more broadly among members.
Well, I think members should consider that there is a chunk of money in the budget that actually is predicated on the AI working. However small it should be, if there is a risk, then we have to really look at the budget. So I think it should go on the risk register, personally.
Thank you, Mark. Hilary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering, you said you gave a consultation with the staff from 1st of March. Were the staff on board with it? Were they happy the way things were going? And are they, obviously they've had a year of over a year of completely going all over the place. Are they fully behind it, and are they really, really happy deep down that they are committed to it? Thank you.
Thanks, Hilary. Adele?
Yes, so with regards to the structure, the team are very, very much on board with it, and we're working with individuals around their personal circumstances to fit them into the tailored rota aspect. For some people, it's brilliant and works really well for them. For some others, they're looking at alternatives, options, shift patterns, that kind of stuff, but we are working with them. But the actual structure, they're all very bought into it. They like the extra leadership capacity and support that will be available to them, especially with the remote working future that we're talking about. It's just having that, knowing that a team leader or a leadership person is there that they can contact or help get support from whenever they're dealing with some particularly tricky calls.
Thank you. Jason, go ahead.
Thanks. Just a comment from me is when I've spoken to the team members, they recognise the benefits for the residents and why this is being done. It's all with the resident and our other customers or partners in mind, so we can provide a better service. And ultimately, since the customer service review started with Councillor Sherwood, everything has to kind of go on pause. So Adele has been running with anything between 4 and 8 vacancies over this period. We've been having to bring in agency staff, train them up, and the nature of that piece is agency staff may find a better paid job and leave sooner. So as soon as we can come out of this process, the stats, and we'll come on to the Q4 performance report on the next agenda item, we've got an opportunity to increase the performance in that customer service team. And once that's landed, the really exciting things can then begin to happen. AI will start to land, and we'll be tinkering with that to make sure it does, again, benefit our residents, and we land the benefits we expect. But also we're starting to prepare some pilots where we can reach out to residents. So rather than be incoming all the time, there's an opportunity to potentially, there's still a few things to check and work through, but to potentially be outbound and be more proactive and supporting potentially vulnerable people or pockets and areas of our residents to help reduce inbound calls by being proactive. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Hilary, firstly, did that deal with your question satisfactorily? Okay, excellent. Are there any further remote members who wish to make any new points? I'm seeing none. Are there any physical members who wish to make any new points? I've got Terry and Peter. So we're going to hear from Terry and Peter, and then I'm going to come back. We're going to deal with the risk register point. We're going to deal with the recommendation, and we're going to deal with the AI item. So I'll just go to Peter first. Hang on, Peter, before I give you an indication. I've got to turn off the mic. Okay, Peter, you go ahead.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman, members, thank you. Yeah, you said you'd come back to the risk register, and I think if Mark wants to make that proposal, I'd like to second that, because in the report, officers have been thorough, and they've gone through everything, and they've contacted and had, what's the word, meetings, if you like, and took advice from the unions, help, wealth and well-being, that sort of thing. So I think that needs monitoring. So that would come under the risk register. I think that'd be an easy way to do it. Especially with the staffing as well, that could be an issue to deliver the service. If the staffing, it's already mentioned, but there's a shortfall there now. And if you do bring agencies in, that'll probably put the cost up initially anyway. And if we do lose the staff again, that could be massive issues to this running effectively to serve the customers. I.e. not having them hanging on the phone 2, 3, 4 hours or having to ring back and that sort of thing. So I think it's basically there, but it just needs monitoring. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to come back to this point about AI, because one of the best things about the customer service team, particularly over the last few years, is their detailed knowledge of a whole variety of subjects has really been one of their main selling points. I'm constantly amazed when you do ring up the variety of stuff that they're able to deal with. And I think the public very much appreciate that, because we know there's an issue with call wait time, call abandonment. But on the whole, once you do get through, the satisfaction is quite significant because you're able to deal with it. So I do think it's important that we consider in that context, when we think about moving to AI, the quality of it has got to be on a par with what we're used to at the moment. So I do welcome Jason's suggestion, sort of probing that a little bit further. I think that's really useful. I was just going to ask as well about the reduction in full-time equivalent sort of linked to the waste contract. I can remember when that contract went through scrutiny and through council, that was referred to. That's still relatively new. Are we confident that actually that's sort of working successfully? people's sort of queries are being dealt with satisfactorily before we move away and sort of permanently delete the sort of staff roles. What's the sort of review process built into the customer contact aspect of the waste service contract? Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Just before we go to an answer for your question, Rob, I understand you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Rodri. Sorry, thank you, Chairman. I think a couple of points. I think just to reiterate the point that Adele and Jason have made, this is a two-phase approach. So phase one is about retention of key staff and career progression opportunities. For the reasons Councillor Jermy's just demonstrated, often we use the contact centre as a starting ground for finding high quality capable officers who migrate to other parts of the organisation or employment elsewhere. I think there's a desire to retain some of that quality and of people within the contact centre and make use of it there for all the good training and experiencing right across the council they get. So phase one is about retention, it's about a leadership team, it's about progression. It's also quite rightly about reflecting the changes that have been made on the balance of the Serco contract. As members will remember, we're across 3 authorities now. It doesn't make sense to have 3 different customer services operations. It needs to consolidate in one place, and that's a key factor of that contract and that proposal, and the staffing changes reflect that. So the budget provision that Adele's demonstrated reflect those changes and don't reflect the changes related to AI. That will come at a later date. I think Jason's suggestion of a future presentation on AI is absolutely right, and I think Scrutiny can have a good opportunity to have a look at that in a great deal of detail. I think one of the principles we're working at is as much of the mundane inquiries that are transactional that we can do in an automated and digital way that allows our officers to speak to people, to deal with complex and more difficult cases. That's what we're endeavouring to do. So the focus of our people and our officers to deal with the complicated, the difficult, the crisis situations, whereas the payments and the process related stuff can be dealt with in an automated way is a key underlying principle of what we're trying to achieve. On the latter point, because I probably know the waste bit a bit more than Adele as well, I can probably pick up Councillor Jermy's point. It is still early days, and there are mechanisms within the contract to review, and perhaps Scrutiny may wish to look at a future point to bring back performance in the first year regarding the new contract to see if they're satisfied with how it's performing. But the underlying principle, as I think you'll all agree, is we're now tripartite across 3 authorities. We're quite forward thinking in that regard. It doesn't make sense to have 3 separate customer services operations running. So I think it will improve customer service across the wider geography, not just Breckland, but I think an appropriate time, by all means, we'd be more than willing to come into Scrutiny and talk about performance of that contract.
Thank you, Rob. Terry, did that deal with your query satisfactorily?
Yes, I think if we could build that into the work programme where we will get to that point later in the agenda, I think that's a reassurance for me that we will be actively looking to review that. So I think that's encouraging.
Thank you. Are there any remote members who would like to make any new points? Otherwise, we're going to go to the risk register issue next. I'm seeing none. Okay, so we've had Mark and Peter talk about the wish for risk register. Would members be able to indicate broadly whether they're supportive that the Cabinet member concerned consider a risk register item in respect to the customer services agenda item ahead of us today, and also the AI spend specifically? I see indications in favour. And physically, are we all consensus? Excellent. In which case, I'll have that as a proposal from Councillor Wilkinson, seconded. Who would like to second physically? Excellent. We'll take Councillor Wickerson, and that's passed unanimously. Mark, obviously you were the proposer, but you can't propose because you're not a physical member. But we've got round that issue. So thank you. We'll make a note of that in the minutes for Councillor Robinson to take on board. The second issue ahead of us is the actual recommendation before the committee today. As Rob has already outlined, this is in respect of the staffing structure rather than related to the AI. So I think the committee can park some of its concerns in respect of the AI aspects that were discussed today until we see a detailed item on AI later in the year or early next year. And so what I'd like to see is, on the basis of it not being affected by the AI, are members in favour, remotely and physically, of that recommendation? Can I see all hands in favour? Okay, so we've got unanimity physically, we've got everyone in favour here. Anyone against remotely? Okay, so Tim, your vote wouldn't have changed the outcome, so I'm going to proceed to take the vote. So that's passed unanimously, or that's passed, we'll say. So that recommendation is done, and then we will pick up the AI item specifically. We've got agreement for the cabinet member and the officers that an item should come, and we can pick it up directly in the work programme later on in the agenda. Do members have any final points they want to make before I move on to the next item? Seeing none, thank you very much. Thank you, Adele. Thank you, everyone, for that. We will now move on to the quarterly report, please. And I think that's Greg. Jason. Sorry, Greg, just testing. Go ahead, Jason.
Thanks, Councillor. The portfolio holder.
Presenting? You sharing your screen? Oh,
No,
sorry, hang on. Hang on.
That'd be myself, Chairman.
There you are.
And Jason will follow on.
Thank you, Mark. Go ahead then.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the Q4 performance report covering the performance of the Council between January and March of this year. Now, at the request of this committee, the report has been altered to add an additional column related to performance during the same quarter 12 months ago. Q4 has seen strong and positive performance continue in areas such as freedom of information and complaint responses, as well as food, health and safety. Excuse me. As detailed within the report, there has also been positive performance in areas such as digital customer communications and garden waste services when compared to our performance the previous year. One notable area is the Council's fly tipping rates, which will, whilst they increasing during the quarter, still fall below the number of fly tips we had seen annually compared to the previous year. It is disappointing to report a rise in Q4. However, it's important to contextualise it is against a national backdrop where rates of reported fly tipping have increased. There have been some challenging areas of performance in the last quarter. Excuse me. Specifically within the customer contact centre, where performance has fallen after Q3 performance of meeting its targets. The report outlines the various factors which have impacted the service. In other areas, such as environmental service and planning, there have been instances where 1 month's performance has been poor, which has impacted the overall quarter's results. Whilst this is disappointing, it's important to highlight that these are viewed as isolated instances, given that February and March performance was at expected levels. Point, Chairman, I will pass over to Jason.
Thank you, Mark. Go ahead, Jason.
Thanks, Councillor Robinson. Now, I don't plan to share my screen. Actually, you've all had the report for the last week or so as standard. Councillor Robinson's actually stolen some of my thunder and some of the highlights I was just going to rattle through. The only other additional points I was going to call out was around the commercial property gross rental income. That continues to perform extremely well given the trading conditions. So that was a highlight I noted. Councillor Robinson's called out some of the customer contact performance issues in Q1. That's why Adele's hanging on if there's any specifics. But again, the commentary and verbatim in the report goes into significant detail. And finally, it was positive to see the FOI and complaint turnaround time being positive for Q4. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. I'm going to go again to physical members first. Are there any physical members who would like to ask a question or make a comment? I've got one from Terry. 1 second, Terry. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. The only one I was just going to mention is the number of incidents of fly tipping and also the tonnage. I mean, it remains a concern despite the really excellent work that's been going on with enforcement. I know that we were due to have the presentation from the enforcement officer at a previous meeting, and I entirely understand why it's not on the agenda today. But I think it's important that we do look at that at our next available meeting. I have concerns that despite the fact that we are undertaking good work with the enforcement, we're not communicating it in a way that's getting through to the vast majority of people on the ground. I think we rely too heavily on sort of print media where the sort of readership is not as strong as we would like. And we need to look at the communication strategy around the enforcement, but also the educational side of it as well, which I know was going to form part of the presentation. But 500 tons of fly tipped material on Breckland land alone in a year is significant, and we've really got to start tackling that in a sort of more rounded way, as well as just the enforcement, which I say is really encouraging. But I know it's coming for a future meeting, but I did just want to highlight that.
And just to clarify, Terry, are you looking for a specific answer, or is that more of a statement? Thank you. In which case, I don't have any other. Oh, I've got Peter. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just going back on what Rob was reporting earlier, and the bin missed bins. Obviously, that's going to go up, and because of the 3 districts, and would we have control over how bins are collected in the other areas? Because we don't know their issues, their problems with bin collection. I don't know what. Could I ask what the number is? It's exceeded the agreed tolerance levels, and I know 20 bins per 100 households is very, very small, but for those 20 people, that will be an issue. But how can we control the other districts with this joint contract, which will impact us, and it's probably not our fault.
I'm gonna go to Rob first. I think he's going to say we trifurcate the figures, but I will let him explain how we do it.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd love to be able to control the other 2 councils, but perhaps that's beyond mine and our gift. I don't have the exact targets and figures in front of us, but what I do know is routinely we only miss 0.05% of bins. To just put that target in context, I agree with you, 20 missed bins is 20 households affected, but in the grand scheme of the amount of bins that are collected, it is very small. In terms of general performance across the 3 authorities, the principles are that there are local performance frameworks in place in each authority, where if you have small issues, you deal with them in isolation. But however, if there becomes a significant issue in one patch, or there becomes an issue that affects all 3 patches, it then gets escalated to the strategic board across the 3 authorities. So if there was a big issue, say in Breckland or North Norfolk or Kings Lynn, we could divert resource from one of the authorities to the other area to help out. And we could be the beneficiary or the person or the authority doing the helping. But for the most part, it remains local, dealing with on the ground local issues to be resolved. That's only there for escalation if something significant and serious needs to be addressed. I've no reason to believe missed bins are going to get any better or any worse, largely because the performance is pretty consistent, a pretty similar level year in, year out. There are seasonal fluctuations around Christmas and seasonal periods, but generally it is a very small percentage of bins that are missed in Breckland.
Thank you, Rob. I've got David.
Got it. Okay, that's good. I think it might be helpful in the future to also have some numbers in this report with regards to the success or otherwise of the new commercial waste collection, which is now available through the new contract. I'm hoping that many businesses have taken advantage of that. I think it would be useful to have some sort of report as to the success or otherwise of the commercial waste collection. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Scrutiny is going to look at all of the indicators again after the corporate plan has been approved, so we can have a look at that issue then. Jason, is there anything you want to pick up from any of those? I see a shake of the head, was that, or hang on?
No, thank you.
Go ahead.
Sorry, no, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Do I have any remote members who wish to make any comments or questions? Councillor Burt and Councillor Clark and Councillor Kittle-Morris. Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, first of all, just a quick comment. Presentation is good, and I much appreciate the way in which the data is being presented now, rather than those infographic cartoons. So thank you. It's much more, it's much more in tune with the business way of working. We've kicked forward the review of KPIs, as you mentioned, and I just wanted to sort of follow up from David's comments and just a few things, just perhaps so that it's not a surprise. I mean, there's some things missing from our report at the moment, like Carbon reporting, we've got nothing on that. 5-year land supply, again, we seem to be, and jobs creation within the district. So I'm hoping that next month that, you know, like heads up, that's what I'd certainly like to be able to see something along those lines. So I've got a couple of questions on the actual performance figures today. As usual, I could have a long list, but I've tried to restrict it. So the call centre one, which is highlighted in red, I mean, that's really the reason I couldn't vote for the last part, because it seems clear that we are failing at the moment, and I am concerned that we're not reacting fast enough. So I'd like to hear about reaction time, because you'll note that in the last minutes on page 7, I did talk about looking at Pentana, and the figures were getting worse quite dramatically, and yet we're a long time down the route before we actually can address that. So just wondering about reaction times and how we're going to report that to OSC and make corrective action earlier. A question that I have asked for the last 2 years and still haven't got an answer, so I'll just throw it in again. How do we measure unique website visitors or new website visitors? I've been promised an answer. Nobody's ever given me one. Now, in more detail, this is perhaps the crux of what I want to talk about, is the freedom of information request. Since it's a statutory time scale, not achieving 100% is obviously a very bad situation to be in. But there is more information in this chart than perhaps that could be useful to us. Allow me just to pick up a little bit from the ICO, and it says authorities should regard the 20 working day limit as a long stop. In other words, the latest possible date on which they may make a response. It goes on. It also follows that an authority which provides a response close to or on the final day of the 20-day working limit ought to be able to both account for and justify the length taken to comply with the request. And I'm concerned that we don't actually have any measure of that. So I'd like to be able to see an additional part in our reporting as to how long it takes us to respond to these, because that's the problem. If we get close to the limit, we might just fall on the wrong side. Just finally, I note that bringing empty houses back into service has been kicked forward again, and really it's one that we really do need to address.
Tim, Jason, do you want me to come to you first to address some of those points?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to leave the reaction time to Adele, if that's okay, but I'll pick up with I wasn't aware that you've been waiting for the website unique measure for 2 years, Councillor Burt, so apologies if that's the case. I can get that over to you offline, so that's absolutely fine, and I can pick that one up. The FOI statutory time scale, now I don't have the detail in front of me, but I suspect the majority of the longer tail ones are the, what's the right phrase? We receive a host of almost junk requests that hit every county council from numerous organisations up and down the country. So I'm not saying they shouldn't be dealt with within the time frame, but typically we might deprioritise those compared to genuine FOI requests. And I can't comment on the houses one. I'd have to come back to you.
My view has always been that rather black and white on FOI requests, in such that there are no junk FOI requests. So I agree with Councillor Burt that we should get a little bit more information on that, although I refer him to my comments I made to Councillor Wickerson that we will be reviewing the full programme after the corporate plan. But it would be good to have that recorded in the minutes that we have special work to do around FOI. Tim, what other points do you want to make? Sorry.
Can I just come back on that? Because actually I've been through the process. I did make an FOI some months ago, and my response, it's a genuine FOI, and my response, which I hope you're not saying was a junk one, was A, not completely answered. One part was missed off altogether. And secondly, it was responded to within hours of the deadline, literally hours of the deadline.
That being said, if we do meet our statutory obligation, then that cheers me up a lot. So within hours of the deadline beats hours past it. Anyway, thank you, Tim. Adele, I think you were going to pick up reaction time.
Yes, so with regards to reaction time, as Jason mentioned earlier, we've had some challenges around, since we went into the service review, it means in effect recruitment goes on hold, you can't recruit staff. So we've been using agency staff, and to manage those agency staff with training and retaining them has been quite difficult. But we are being as reactive as you can with pulling resource on that is available. I expect once the service review completes and we're able to recruit properly into these posts and retain these people, and again that flexibility within the leadership structure would enable more reaction for us, so more capacity to react to peaks in demand.
Thank you, Adele. Tim, do you have any final supplementaries before I move on? Tim?
Sorry,
Anyone?
no.
Okay. I think I've got Harry next. Harry, do you want to ask your questions?
Yes, so thank you, Chairman, and thank you to Jason for your report. My question on Q4 is around complaints. There's a focus there on the timescales and responses. It's really a suggestion to Jason, obviously other members of the Commission, as to whether that can be broken down, unless I've missed it, into types of complaint. We may get complaints where a member of the public, for example, may make a complaint about the neighbour, antisocial behaviour, etc., or it may be a complaint about Breckland's services themselves, and it might be useful to have a breakdown by particular issue. Obviously, it's one area that members in their own wards may not know about unless it's actually brought to their attention by residents or officers of the council. I'm not suggesting it be broken down publicly by ward, etc., but it might be something useful to flow up particular issues for members to focus on outside the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Jason, any comments on that?
Yeah, thank you. So we have a statutory information officer that monitors those for trends. That's something that we might want to report on a 6-monthly or annual basis into this commission, but we are monitoring trends on a weekly, monthly basis. So if we do see a spike, we're able to act or ideally be proactive rather than react to a volume or a trend of FOIs or complaints.
Thank you. Anything else, Harry, or are you satisfied? Go ahead.
Just to say, it might be useful. So, for example, if we obviously you would be reporting any spikes or trends. So, for example, if there were 45 complaints about a failure to answer the phone or etc., so about big complaints might be about the contact centre, it might be about bins, etc. But it might be useful to have a small pie chart each quarter, just illustrating the type where we can narrow that down. So it might enable us to sort of pick up some of those things, so at least members themselves could say, well, we've only had this amount of complaints about X, and sometimes people don't always complain about services. Can I just also add an unrelated issue that in terms of bins, I'm 100% satisfied because I've never had a bin collection missed ever in any period of bad weather whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Mark.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just a comment. Thank you very much, Jason, for the report. I do agree with what Terry said about fly tipping. I think there should be something within the council which is a more robust strategy to prevent it. In rural locations, and I'm sure Terry gets it in his urban location, we get a lot of fly tipping along the side of the road in verges. And what's even worse, of course, you would get a fly tip on a farmer's field, and it's not up to Breckland to clear it up. It's a farmer's problem, and that puts an onus on a financial onus on them to get rid of it. It can be quite a huge cost to them. A couple of things about the bin collection. Do we use Strange? I'm not saying Strange in any other way other than non-Serco crews to crew some of our collection routes, and could that have increased the number of missed bins, those particularly who have their bin collected not from the roadside but from down their driveway because they're disabled or whatever? That might increase it. I don't know whether that's the truth or not. And I've got something else written down here. The complaints. How do you treat vexatious complaints or complaints from vexatious complainers in the statistics? Because actually you probably don't answer them because they are labelled vexatious by the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to go to Rob first on the bins question, and if he wants vexatious complainants question, and then I'll come back to Jason for anything. Go ahead.
Okay, in terms of the waste crews, there are times due to sickness absence, but be it seasonal or in COVID times, if bubbles have had particular needs to self-isolate, agency staff will be used by Circa, or staff from other parts of their contractual team will be used. It's not a routine thing, Councillor Kittle-Morris, but that's how they cover when there are staff shortages due to sickness and a variety of other reasons, and they use agency staff. You're absolutely correct. When agency staff come in, that can be correlated with a small increase in missed bins because they're not familiar with the geography, they don't know the exact circumstances of their route or their patch. So we've often found that when an agency team's come in, there has been a small spike in such performance statistics. I would say even if there's a small spike, it's a relatively low spike because overall the performance is strong in that area. But you're right, when agency staff are used, they're less familiar with the circumstances of a particular route, and it can lead to more bins being missed, even if they're small in total number. In terms of the fly tipping, if I may, I'm pleased to hear that members are really supportive of the strong performance we've got on enforcement. I think you'll have seen news from around the county where others are going to try and replicate what we've achieved within Breckland. It's down to a really strong officer. You know, as much as we can talk about our approach and things, we've got a really highly capable officer and team doing some really strong work on enforcement at the moment. Absolutely support the need to try and do more around education and prevention. I think members will be sympathetic that this is a blight and a problem that we're not alone in experiencing, and actually it's a national trend. But if we can lead the way on enforcement, let's lead the way on prevention as well. In terms of the vexatious policy, vexatious complainants, we have a vexatious complainant policy, so there's criteria that have to be met before we treat a complainer as vexatious. I'm not sure in terms of how we deal with that in the statistics. Jason might be able to help. But would imagine once somebody has been deemed vexatious, they're not used in the statistics that we report in terms of the number of complaints we receive. That said, the number of vexatious complainants we have is very, very small. I can count on one hand the number that I've dealt with in the last few years. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Rob. I'll just go to Jason on vexatious complainants. Jason, wait one.
Yeah, apologies. I don't have the detail, Mr. Chairman. Adele or even experienced Greg might be able to help us with this one.
Greg, go ahead.
So as part of the vexatious complainant policy, we wouldn't include them in the statistics, but as Rob said, they are very few and far between, and actually, if memory recalls correctly, the vexatious policy requires us to report any vexatious people to this committee on an annual basis, so you would all be aware if they were vexatious anyway.
Sorry, just to be clear, and maybe I haven't been reading my papers closely enough, when did we last report the vexatious complainants list to scrutiny?
I would have to hand back to colleagues there, but I suspect probably prior to the pandemic, but it's certainly something we can bring forward.
We'll raise that on the work program. We mentioned we're looking at that. Haven't seen that recently. Thank you.
Rodri, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Is that better? I was talking just too quietly. It wasn't even a technical problem. I'm not usually accused of that. Fine. So vexatious complainants policy, we'll have a look at that as part of the work plan. Are there any other remote members who wish to make comments or questions on this item? I'm seeing none. Are there physical members who wish to? I've got Fabian. 1 second, Fabian. Go ahead.
So mine's just a clarification on the missed bins last quarter. Probably the responsibility in my ward because we had about 6 properties lived down a very rural road, and that was closed due to extreme damage. And I think that was missed for 2 weeks because there needs another property to come round. And I think there's another thing we have to take into account. We don't totally blame us. I know within my ward as well, rural and some what we call the original sort of, we say, rural terraced houses. If someone else parks inconsiderately outside someone else's property, that makes the bin inaccessible to the bin drivers. And I do know that when people complain to me about their neighbours. So I don't think we have to take factors in that are not entirely Breckland.
Thanks, Fabian. Rob, do you want to make any comment on that?
Well, I think the chairman may have a degree of sympathy for you, Councillor Eagle, because there is one street in his patch where inconsiderate parking leads to perennial problems with the vehicles being able to get down that road to do the collection. We're still obliged to make those collections, so we have to take every reasonable step we can do. But, you know, the rurality of the district, some of the roads, and it leads to a variety of truck sizes and such like that we need to use to make sure we can access different parts. But yeah, we're obliged to collect them, but there are in most cases legitimate reasons why it's not happened.
He is correct. I have a lot of sympathy for your position. I don't have any other members wishing to comment. The recommendation is that the committee notes the report. Are there any members remotely who are opposed to noting the report? I don't see any. Are there any members physically who are opposed to noting the report? That's good, in which case we're unanimously agreed that we will note the report, and I thank the officers and members for their contributions on that item. Which brings us to the next item, which is the corporate plan refresh. And I think, Greg, you are going to present that and share your screen. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So I've been tasked with presenting the corporate plan and making it more accessible by the chair and the portfolio holder. So if you just bear with me for a second while I try to share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, Greg, we can see it. Carry on.
Oh, sorry, thank you. So in terms of the corporate plan, probably just slightly teaching you to suck eggs on some points is the first slide, which talks about why we have a corporate plan. And basically, just to run through very briefly, I'm sure you're all aware of this already. We have a corporate plan because it's a key part of running a successful organisation. It helps ensure that everyone in the organisation is working to the same priorities, that we're all heading in the same direction, and we're clear about what we need to achieve. It helps us ensure that risks are effectively identified and managed. It provides a tool to measure performance, and obviously we've talked about refreshing the performance framework once the corporate plan is signed off in the coming months. And it also enables the organisation and its managers to plan out resources and budget more effectively. And obviously we link this into future budget setting. So what has changed really? So in February 2019, we agreed a new corporate plan that would run for 4 years until the 31st of March 2023. However, over the last 15 months, there have been a number of significant changes that have we hadn't planned for. So obviously the large one being the COVID-19 pandemic, and that has changed the way we work in a lot of ways and what the expectations from our communities are. Equally, our 10-year strategic partnership with South Holland has come to an end, and that has also changed the way in which we're working. So in discussion with the cabinet, we feel that rather than potentially a kind of light touch refresh of the corporate plan, it was more appropriate to look at a bit more of a fundamental reshaping of the document to kind of realize the new world in which we are all working in. So I'm here today to kind of set out what that could look and feel like, and to run through what the proposed themes are and some of the areas that we'll cover. one of the constant challenges that's come through around the corporate plan is that it is a very dry document, and it's something that a lot of the time ends up going on the shelf and we look at once a year. So I've been challenged by Councillor Robinson and his predecessor, Councillor Suggett, as well as the leader and the deputy leader, to make it a little bit more accessible. So we are looking at how we will still obviously have that kind of work, that PDF document that which will sit on our website, but we also want to make it a little bit more accessible. So we're looking at how we integrate it into our website. And we're kind of generating a slightly infographic style report or product, which these are kind of some indications of what it might look like. We haven't designed that bit yet because we are still obviously finessing the content and waiting for that to be signed off at council, and then we'll design this. But the ethos would be that this would almost sit on our website, and we would enable people to click on an item they're interested in, and they could drill down and potentially could give them an update on the progress made to date and any KPIs that are linked to that. So kind of we're looking to integrate performance and that into one piece. So that will be a bit of a work in progress over the next coming months. In terms of the kind of the key objectives of the corporate plan, so the vision will remain unchanged. So we are looking at retaining the Breckland a place where people and business can thrive. And we are still going to have 4 strategic objectives, but we are changing them away from the your council, your place, etc. that we currently have, to link them more towards some of the pieces of work that, or the big kind of recognized brands that we have going on with some of our big programs of work. So you will recognize the Inspiring Communities brand. That is our vulnerability piece. We're keeping our environmental theme, that is the Breckland 2035. Thriving Places will cover our economic piece, and then Working Smarter will reflect our more internally focused council workings, where we're looking to improve the way we work. Obviously, I've touched that there will be a revised look, and we are currently looking at developing a revised narrative for the organisation, which reflects where we are now and what our aspirations for the future are. So I'm going to go through those in a little bit more detail in terms of the 4 objectives to provide you with a flavour of what we're proposing goes under each of those. So what we're looking at today is I'm going to run through these, and we're here today to kind of welcome your feedback and input into anything we might have missed, anything that you feel we should consider including. So all feedback is very much welcome. The initial plan currently is to bring this forward to council in July, where you'll have opportunity to have input into the final wording that goes into the document as we normally do. So in terms of the Inspiring Communities theme, so this, as I said earlier, will be the kind of the council's community focused actions for the lifetime of this revised plan. So under this area, we would look to cover off homelessness prevention within the district, ensuring kind of that all our residents have suitable, safe and secure housing. It would cover all of the activity that sits within our £1 million vulnerability programme. So that would include addressing social isolation, domestic abuse, working around preventing county lines and mental health, just to name a few. Obviously, we deliver a community grant scheme, so we'd look to include that. We take a very robust approach to community safety, so that would be reflected in this. Obviously, we've talked a lot in the past about the health of our communities, and that has become even more important with the pandemic. Partnership working will sit in this, so we can't deliver this alone. we need to work with our partners to do it. That might be the county council, it might be other districts, it might be the police, it might be health services, etc. So that will kind of run through this area as well. We will look at leisure, and so not just our current provision, but also what leisure might look like in the future here. And we will also have a small bit to recognise that obviously while we are coming out of the pandemic, we will continue to live with COVID, and that will have some impact on our day-to-day life for a while to come. So moving on to thriving places. So this is our growth and economic piece for the lifetime of the plan. This will look at kind of setting out a strategic or a coherent strategic infrastructure plan and identifying growth pipeline for projects for the future. This is particularly important to future funding. We will look at future housing under this. Obviously, we will capture work relating to the future Breckland project, which is the market town delivery plans, apologies. We'll also look at how we work with our towns and how we help deliver investment into those places in the future. We'll look at how we drive the local economy and how we make it an inclusive economy. We'll look at how we continue to provide support to our businesses, not just the ones that are here now, but any new ones that may come up or may wish to locate in the area. We'll also look at the kind of some of the COVID security pieces that we need to do with our businesses to help them continue to grow and thrive during these times as we ease out of the pandemic. And also we'll look at how we provide our residents and visitors with confidence to kind of return to our high streets. Moving on to Breckland 2035. So as I said earlier, this is very much our environmental agenda. So this is not just the sustainability program we've agreed, but obviously that will set out a large part of this. Obviously, so we will look at what we've set out in our sustainability program and how we will deliver that. So just touching very briefly, but not fully, on delivering community grants, green grants, tree planting, environmental schemes, looking at electric vehicle options and other options for the future, making improvements to our buildings to reduce our carbon footprinting, generally how we work towards being net zero by 2035, obviously linking into waste and recycling and making sure that we are working or using our contract to educate our residents around waste and recycling, not just to increase recycling, but to actually prevent waste at source by shaping their behaviours. Obviously, we will look at our planning service and local planning as part of this and how that shapes into our environmental ambitions as we go forward. Obviously, we talked a little bit about it earlier, but environmental enforcement, and we will look to setting out how that will grow and become robust or more robust over the lifetime of the plan. And we'll also look at how we shape our kind of contracts and procurement functions, not only to be efficient, but also how we use them to kind of drive our environmental agenda in the supply chain. And then moving on to working smarter. So this is the kind of more internally focused kind of council actions. So it will focus on how we use data and intelligence to shape and inform decisions, rationalising our IT estate to improve services and reduce costs. Jason and Adele have already spoken a lot today about customer services functions, but we'll look at how we make those even better than they are now, transforming our website for those people that want to use it so they get a frictionless user experience, delivering a balanced budget, because Alison will crucify me if I don't mention that, and it's obviously very important to be able to deliver all of the things we're setting out here today. Again, obviously delivering an efficiency program to make sure that we continue to deliver a balanced budget. Looking at opportunities in the future about how we maximize and bring in external funding. We will look about on our people focused agenda about how we are supporting our employees and members and enabling them to be the best that they can be to carry out their duties. That might be through wellbeing and support, training, development, etc. We'll obviously cover off anything about governance here, so making sure that we are, legally compliant, that we are democratically accountable, and that we're well governed. Obviously, there will be a bit in here about how we promote ourselves as an organisation. That's twofold. One, to kind of help us attract kind of high caliber staff, but also to kind of set out that we're a partner of choice for other districts and beyond. And also we'll be looking at having an efficient asset portfolio, and that might mean looking at doing things slightly differently, seeking new investments, or with a view to generating income, which will continue to support services as we go forward. So that's a very whistle-stop canter through what we're talking about today. I'll just unshare my screen. I'm happy to take any feedback and comments that people might have, but we thought it was just important to come today to set out, our thinking so far on where we are with the corporate plan to date. I'll hand back over to you, Chair.
Greg. I'll kick off now. You can ignore my comments if these are too anal, but I just thought I should make them anyway to show that I'm contributing. The first one was on your slide for strategic objectives. Is it a branding decision to have a capital B for business, or is it just a typo?
Sorry, Chair, you broke up there slightly. What was the?
I said, is it a branding decision to have the capital B for business, or is that just typographical?
I suspect it's probably just typographical, but.
Very good, okay. And then could I suggest that we rename Working Smarter to Smarter Working? And the reason for that is that it should be working more smartly, or it can be smarter working. And then my other suggestion, and this is probably the only material one that I have, is Breckland 2035. For me, 2035 is a long way away. And obviously to hit our net zero target, clearly there are a lot of other important things in there as well, but our net zero target will require year-on-year progress. So I think you could show that in the title more effectively by using a phrase like greening Breckland rather than Breckland 2035. And the other point I'd make is, I don't know, and this is a matter obviously for the executive rather than scrutiny, but I'm conscious that other local authorities in the area have got differing targets. The County Council most recently has targeted 2030. I don't know whether or not we would want to consider our targets in light of other councils' objectives, and whether or not there are any synergies that could be obtained working with other councils to achieve that net zero target across Norfolk as local authorities. So that was all my points. You don't need to come back on any of them to me. They're just to be thrown into the mix. I'm going to ask for physical members first, but I note that remotely we've got Robert, Mark and Tim. I've got Terry and Peter and David. So we'll go to those three first. I'll do all three of them, and then Greg, I'll get you to feed in on those three sets of questions. Terry and then Peter.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you for the presentation, Greg. Slightly flippantly, but top tip for you, Greg, if you want to make it more accessible, maybe we should drop the name corporate plan. It sounds boring, and something else which describes it would definitely make me want to click on it on the website rather than corporate plan, but maybe we can't change it. At risk of being even more pedantic than the chairman, in the slide, Greg, in the section that talks about what has changed, I would suggest actually a third bullet point there would be under the top two, would be necessary, because since we last adopted our corporate plan, this council has declared a climate emergency and we have adopted a sustainability strategy. And if we're going to be serious about that, that has got to run through the entirety of our corporate plan, because it can't be seen in isolation. It's got to be absolutely sort of interwoven into everything that we do as a council. And that for me is as equally significant as the two other bullet points on there. But I know that you're passionate about it, and I just want to make that point, because for me it's crucial to everything that we do moving on. Just a couple of things that would perhaps matter to me as a member and a sort of representative of my area. One of the big challenges that we have in Thetford and also Breckland wide is this issue of social mobility and of people's wages, frankly. Breckland, Thetford, in the terms of the UK statistics, we are very much at the top of the poor social mobility scale, and we are very much at the top of the sort of low wages as well. And if we are wanting to improve people's quality of life, which ultimately the corporate plan would seek to do, as a council, we've got to do what we can to raise people's wages and improve social mobility. And I would like to see mention of those aspirations somewhere within the corporate plan, if we can. I mean, they're sort of implied in some of the sort of different tasks, if you like, but specifically for me, they are important. And linked to that, there's always a focus I find with councils about doing new things. Let's plant new trees, let's plant or create new open spaces. I've always been really passionate about people having pride in where they live, and the sort of maintenance of existing open spaces, of existing sort of communal areas that we own as a council. We can't forget the day job, if you like. And there's a section on sort of people and communities. If we want people to be aspirational, if we want people to have pride in where they live, we've got to take better care as a council on some of those sort of community assets. And I would again like to see that sort of built in there as an aspiration, that we don't just have bog standard flower beds that are Breckland's responsibilities. Let's have really good flower beds and look after our assets and our open spaces. But they're the two things that I probably would like to see. But I like a lot of what's in there. It's a good document, but those 2 points just jumped out at me as perhaps wanting a bit more.
Thank you, Terry. After Terry's wholesome contribution, I'll actually come to you, Greg, for a response so that we don't have you have to answer 6 questions. So go ahead.
Fine, I was busy writing them down because I have to confess my memory is shocking these days. So in terms of Councillor Jeremy's comments, I completely agree about calling it something different to the corporate plan. So I'm more than happy to take that one away. Again, equally agree with the comments about the kind of the climate change emergency and sustainability. Obviously, we are working on a narrative that will sit alongside this document, so we will make sure that that is reflected throughout that. But I note your comment, and I will make sure that that is added in as another rationale for change into anything we bring further in the future. In terms of social mobility, completely agree. I think you kind of touched on it yourself, Councillor Jeremy. It is kind of broadly covered in some of the others, but we may make it more explicit. But I think the nuance is it's trying to be set out in that bit about the inclusive economy that we reference. But I take the feedback, it's maybe not clear enough, so we'll go away and look at how we bring that forward. And again, I think I completely agree with the pride in the place you live. Some of that is tied up in the kind of cleaner, greener, safer agenda that maybe we haven't put out as explicitly, but we can certainly look at how we bring that to life a bit more. I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Greg. I'm going to go to Peter next. Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for a good presentation there, Greg. It was an interesting slides. It's a comprehensive list, though, isn't it? And I'm concerned that how can we deliver a lot of these things in the next 2 or 3 years, or rather than thinking we're going to 2035. I noticed in the report it said about increasing and improving housing. Now we're very short of social housing in Breckland, even right across Norfolk. And I'm just wondering, that's an important issue, and that can't linger on for very long. Would you prioritise some things on the list, like the social housing? Could because you're going to have to deliver houses which is going to accept climate change products into these buildings and different things like that for sustainability. And is the possibility of working with our partner Breckland Bridge to deliver these houses in the short term, rather than it just be on a list in the corporate plan going on and on and on, and then we don't achieve everything. I feel the list is quite large in this corporate plan to deliver everything what is important to people and members in relatively a short time.
Go ahead, Greg.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Wilkinson. So in terms of this is a kind of very high level document, and as you said, it is kind of very much an aspirational, like setting out of the direction we are looking to head. Now, some of those will be more longer term aspirations, so we'll be putting kind of tools and plans in place to help deliver those more long term aspirations as we go forward, maybe into the lifetime of the next corporate plan as well. In terms of the detail, we obviously, as an officer group, are working up the delivery plans that sit underneath this, and that is where we will look at identifying the timings of these things as they come forward. I think we're currently focusing as a collective on the kind of the high level strategy and getting that agreed, and then we will kind of add some more of the kind of the finite detail which can be shared at a later date, if that helps answer your query.
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds like Ray's understood what the aspirations is a word I didn't use, and he picked up on that, and they're going to have that build underneath to deliver what is important, which I understand. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. David.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me, sorry. Thank you, Greg. It's always difficult, I know, to put forward an aspirational list, but I think that certainly I would compliment the team that put that together, because I think within Breckland's remit, there are certain things that we would like to change, but we can't because it's outside of our remit. And a lot of the comments that I get as a ward councillor relate to education, for example, which we don't have much of an impact on, unfortunately, and health, which is, again, is something which is outside of our remit. But the chairman kind of stole my thunder a little bit on the Breckland 2035 issue, because I think it kind of indicates that this is a target for all of this list, which it isn't, obviously. This is an ongoing list. And I think it would be better if we changed the title of that page to Greening Breckland or some other, which would indicate that a lot of this stuff is going ahead as we speak and will be in place far earlier than 2035. So I think that if the powers that be can maybe retitle that would be very, very useful. But I think overall it does set out, as I said, a very good aspirational list for whatever is in our remit and we can have some impact on. So thank you for that.
Thank you, David. So I've got Robert, Mark, and Tim. Robert, if you go next. Oh, hang on 1 second. Don't go yet. I need to turn on the mic so we can hear you. Okay, now you can go.
Thank you, Chairman. This is obviously a slightly edited version of the one that was sent out to members, because slides 6 to 9 are all headed "What does this included?" And in fact, slides 6 and 9 in the narrative also use the phrase "What does this included?" So there's a further edit needed, I think. I'm not sure entirely what the ordinary member of the public will understand by growth pipelines and full pipelines. And I think that we need to develop that so that it means something to the ordinary reader. And final comment is, in common with every other corporate plan that Breckland has produced, there is no mention of member engagement. And I think, as
elected politicians, we do see ourselves as part of the interface between the public and the council, and I think that's an area that needs some thought and development. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Greg, did you have anything you want to flag on those points?
To say thank you, apologies. Yes, my my dyslexia does get ahead of me on occasion, so I will get my colleagues and Dems to send out the corrected version. In terms of the kind of comments about language, completely agree. So we'll go back and we'll look at those, and again we will go back and look at the comments about how we work member engagement into our corporate strategy as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Mark. Sorry, Mark.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've read it with interest. I think it's full of good things. And thank you, Greg, for the presentation. However, I think there's one thing missing from this. We have a mandatory strategic vision for Breckland in the local plan, which is approved by, through examination, a very long-winded process. It takes over 4 years. Now, some of the aspirations in here are actually covered by the local plan. I can see no reference to the local plan. Now, however that may change over the years, included in things like house building, vision for the economy, design and access and all that sort of thing, and including infrastructure. Those are all included or could be included in the local plan. And I think reference to that is needed in this document to ensure that the two documents are knitted together in some fashion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mark. Greg?
Totally agree. So I'll take those comments on board and go back and work out how I weave those in more effectively.
Thank you. And Tim?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a slight throwaway. The branding, the logo, is rather reminiscent of Microsoft. Let's hope we haven't infringed any patents that they might have. So a couple of comments on the detail. Slide 7, that's thriving place. We seem to have backed off a little bit. What about jobs is really where I'm coming from. I mean, back in February, I gave some graphs when I asked a question and showed that the Breckland area was actually, in terms of job density, falling behind. And I'm wondering whether this is something that we need to be bringing out here. And it's kind of missing in its entirety about that employment side of things. Looking at slide 8, so Breckland 2035, I am following on exactly from Terry's comment here, in that this climate emergency needs to be woven throughout the whole fabric of this document, and yet it seems to be sort of just one small bullet in the middle of a page. And is it just a target? It's like kind of just a throwaway target of 2035. I really think we need to toughen up on that, on what we're going to do, and put some things in about a proper plan. And finally, just on slide 9, tickles me a little bit, bullet 8, when we're giving a list of things that we're going to do to be legally compliant. Well, really, that sort of thing. I mean, if we wanted to pull some things out, surely it's a given that we're going to be legally compliant. We don't need to put in a corporate plan that we're going to do this to be legally compliant. Okay.
Thank you, Tim. Greg?
Thank you, Tim. I will go back and look at the jobs and employment comment, because I agree, probably that hasn't come out as strongly as it needs to do. So we will go back and I'll work with my colleague Andrew to see how we reflect that more appropriately. Likewise with the comments on 2035, I will take that away and figure out or set out more appropriately throughout the document that how we tie it all together, similar with the comments around the local plan from Councillor Kittle-Morris. I hadn't picked up on the Microsoft colouring, so I've just used the suite from PowerPoint. So I'm obviously being brainwashed into using Microsoft branding without realising it. But Thank you, Tim. Sorry, Councillor Burt, I'll take your comments away and weave them in.
I think the clue there is that you were using Microsoft PowerPoint.
Absolutely.
Thank you all. I don't see any further indications from remote members. I don't see further indications from physical members. I think we're just noting. So are members happy to note the presentation? And obviously we've given our comments back to Greg. Seeing approval from there, seeing approval from there. Okay, all members have noted. So thank you all. Thank you, Greg, for that presentation and everyone for their input. Item 10 is outside body feedback. Do any members, remote or physical, wish to make a report? I've got Peter physically. Anyone remotely? No one remotely. Okay, let's hear Peter's feedback. Then go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As representative, Breckland's representative at the QEH Hospital in King's Lynn, I was going to bring this report to the last meeting, which was cancelled. So this might be out in the press now anyway. You might be aware of it, members. But national government-wide paper came out for integration and innovation working, an ICS, which is an integrated care system, and the Norfolk and Waveney integrated care system came into being on the 1st of April 2021, and now Queen Elizabeth Hospital King's Lynn is a part of that integrated care system, which is going to bring outside. Is a big thing that I brought up many years ago on the ONS in Norfolk Health, to bring outside bodies together, where we work with they can prevent hospitalisation and care in the home and that sort of thing. So it's going to be a whole big package rather than hospital care and social workers working in isolation. And they'll all be brought together under this new ICS system. Also, we're still lobbying government to have a new hospital build for QEH. Working by lobbying government, that will be mentioned in the next phase mentioned in the list of new hospitals by the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Mark, you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say thank you.
Sorry, 1 second, Mark. Bear with me. Now you can comment.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to comment. Thank you for the feedback today. It's been really useful for both Greg and myself. I think the document's definitely heading in the right direction. It's a good document as an overarching document at a high level. Us as a council, we set out to support residents and work with residents and make Breckland a place to thrive for the next 15 years. I think it's definitely moving in the better direction, and particularly the feedback on the environmental side, which I do agree should run through the document, is quite useful. So yeah, we appreciate the feedback.
Excellent, thank you, Mark. The next item is the scrutiny call-ins. There have been none. And then item 12 is the councillor call for action.
Chairman.
Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Burt, 1 second. Go ahead.
Yes, just winding back slightly.
Turned him off. Carry on, Councillor Burt. I silenced you.
Oh well, such power.
Yes. What item would you like to speak on? Sorry.
Just wind back slightly onto scrutiny call-ins. This is not. It's just a slight concern, and I just wanted sort of a bit of a maybe a heads up. There's a decision about the Litcham project, part of our Breckland Bridge or Colkirk extension. A lot of the documentation with that is going back a very long way, like 2016, and the environmental sides of this seem to be somewhat out of date. the decision's gone through, and it's you know, I'm debating on the point, saying that perhaps we should call that one in. Perhaps I could take some views on some other people, see what they think.
Let me just get advice from Teresa as to whether or not the window for call-in is still open first before the conversation is moot. Teresa? Bear with us. We're establishing whether you have a constitutional right.
I believe it's still valid, but yeah.
Just while we're on that, so item 12 was a councillor call for actions. There have been none notified to me, so I'll close item 12. We'll revert back to item 11, under which.
Oh, you're still muted, Teresa.
No, sorry, she's just relaying it to me. 1 second. Okay, so the position would be that it can be called in by the chairman or 2 members of scrutiny, or I forget the total numbers of other members, but I'm not sure that's pertinent here. The call-in date is by the 7th, but you would need to provide reasons as to why the call-in should be made to the executive director. Tim, I think this is probably not a matter for scrutiny discussion, to be honest. I think it will be a decision for you as a member with 1 other member of scrutiny to consider whether or not you have reasons to call in that item. Of course, if you call it in, it will go on to the agenda, but you will need to provide reasons to the executive director. Is that okay?
Yes, it's fine. It's really just a heads up and sort of just expressing a little bit of concern over this particular one. So yeah, I'll follow that up afterwards.
Thank you. Your concerns are noted. Mark, carry on.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Were we talking about the one in Colkirk or the one in Litcham?
Litcham.
Okay, well, just to put members, that has an outline planning permission on it anyway for the dwellings that are going to be brought forward on the full planning application, the reserved matters application. And it is in my ward as well. So if it did come into scrutiny, I had conversations with the leader on before he made that decision. And if it did come to scrutiny, I would have to recluse myself from speaking on that matter.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, well, I think we all know where we stand on that. I'll leave it to Councillor Burt and 1 other to consider their position on calling in that decision. Item 13 then is the work programme. Just looking around before we do other members, we've got the AI item, which will be put at a date to be determined in the future. And similarly, we'll put down the vexatious complainants item at a date to be determined on the work programme. I have Terry who wants to raise a point. Anyone else physically? No one else physically. So I'm going to go to Terry first and then I'll come to remote members.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, jump the gun now. Just 2 points that I wanted to ask if we could consider at some point. I seem to be spending my life at the moment sending photos related to the Serco contract, whether that's weed spraying or grass cutting. So I wonder if at some point, and I see we're fairly busy for July, but September may be an opportune time, if we can look at how the Serco contract is performing on a whole number of different aspects, but I think members would be particularly interested in that because obviously it affects all of us. But also I wondered if we could at some point have a bit of a report on the Inspiring Communities programme. I'm quite keen to understand how we select projects for funding and kind of what the expected benefits are of some of the projects that we fund, and what the process is for that, because again, it's sort of district wide, it's a significant amount of money, it's doing some really good stuff, and I want to better understand it and understand how we choose which projects to support as part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. I'm sure we can add both of those. I suggest we add the Serco to the September meeting, and Inspiring Communities to October. Is that right? Yeah. Great. I've got Peter next. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, as Councillor Jeremy just said about the Serco contract, there's been some issues this last few weeks, this last month actually, where the grass has not been cut. It's a 2-foot high in one of my villages, and I did email the new member portfolio holder for the contracts, and she's not responded yet, but her response might be interesting, Councillor, to where we move and calling that in and having a real discussion with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. No one else physically. I have Tim remotely. Are there any other remote members who wish to speak? As I've got Hillary also. 1 second, Tim. Okay, go ahead, Tim. Oh, and then we'll go. Sorry, Alison, did you want to comment on Peter's point? If you
no,
just...
no, thank you. No, something else afterwards.
Okay, fine. We'll go Tim, then we'll go Hillary, then we'll go Alison. Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Chairman. Something for consideration, I believe. The last meeting was cancelled through an IT issue. We've had other IT issues in time. I know that emails were delayed recently, and I think we did have IT on something on one of the lists at one point, but I don't think we actually got there. I do think that this is something that we should bring to OSC to review our IT infrastructure and the strength of our systems. And certainly I know some people have also said about the iPads not being suitable, especially with the remote working that we've had.
Tim, I'm going to be a terrible disappointment to you. We did have an item on cybersecurity a few meetings back. Because that issue that led to the sad cancellation of my previous scrutiny meeting was a Microsoft one rather than a Breckland local issue, would you be prepared for us to reconsider that in a couple of meetings' time onto the work programme? Because at the moment I'm not sure. I don't want to have an item which discusses members' interaction with iPads, because I don't think that's what the public will most wish to see scrutiny time being used on. And I don't think there's anything you can usefully do in respect of Microsoft. And we have done cybersecurity and flagship. So I think we might have IT'd ourselves, at least for this year, unless you, well, I will put it obviously to members ultimately, but I'm putting the case that we might delay yet another IT item.
Okay. Well, may I say, I maybe delay a little, but perhaps I'd like to see it this year, because I think this is, I mean, look, we are becoming more, it's becoming more and more important. Access is via IT. We've had website issues in the past. I do think it is something which really affects the residents of Breckland. So yeah, okay, iPads, but
we'll put it on date TBC, and then I can liaise with the portfolio holder for when an opportune time. I want it to be something where we can credibly make a difference. So I need us to be focused and have a specific issue that we're going to look at. And we did a good job around cybersecurity. I thought we covered the flagship issue as well, but this would appear to be slightly too amorphous at this stage. But if we put it on the TBC, then we know to come back to it at future work programme agenda items to consider whether there's something more specific to look at. Is that satisfactory? You wouldn't use the word satisfactory, but you'll agree to it.
I know where I stand within this within the commission. Shall we put it that way?
Understood. Okay. Well, let's see that as a reasonable compromise then. Are there any other? Oh, sorry. I've got Hillary, and then I've got Alison. Hillary, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. In light of how important the climate
Are you able to speak up slightly, Hilary? You're quite quiet.
I'm trying to shout a bit loud. Is that better? Right. Knowing how important it is for climate change to Breckland and the work that we're anticipating doing over the coming years, might it be in order for us to ask initially our town councils to come to overview and scrutiny so that we know that they are in fact undertaking, they've declared climate emergencies, what routes and what options are they making?
So I think that is an interesting idea. I don't think it will be feasible for us to invite all of the town councils to a scrutiny meeting, but it may well be that we could have the relevant executive member write out to the town councils, establish their position, and then once we have their position, have a short report brought to scrutiny that outlines, which councils have declared a climate emergency, which ones are looking to go to net zero, what the date is that they're looking to achieve that by. And that will further inform our net zero framework and target, if that would be satisfactory. Teresa, are you able to? And then I've got Greg, I think, as a comment on that, is it? Or is this a separate point? Yes, come in, Greg, there on that comment then.
So just to provide some assurance, I've got a number of meetings with the various reps from the town councils over the next month to actually start that piece of work and understanding what they're doing and how they can contribute towards our agenda. So I can tie that back in probably in September, October time for you, if that is suitable.
That'd be great, thank you. And then I've got Alison.
Thank you very much, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Councillor Jervey for raising the Inspiring Communities chat with Overviewing Scrutiny. It's a programme that we're very, very proud of, the good work it's doing, and we'd be more than pleased to come along in October to talk about what we're doing and the type of criteria we're looking at. But then the other thing I was going to talk about, Chairman, was the housing performance review. Obviously, housing team has gone through a considerable change, and we promised that we would come back and show Overviewing Scrutiny, the committee, some metrics on what we're doing and see whether they agree that that's the sort of thing we should be measuring, rather than we come up with a done deal and we give you what we think you want. So I'd be quite keen to actually do that sort of August, September, if possible, please.
That would be great. I think that would work well to tie in, Greg. I don't know when you're planning on doing, oh, sorry, not Greg, Jason. Why do I keep doing that to Jason? I don't think Jason's here anymore. Oh, is he? I can't see you, Jason, but I'm sure, oh yeah, there you are. Okay, I don't know when you're planning on bringing in the item on the metrics for the quarterly performance after the corporate plan, but perhaps we could tie that in with Alison's metrics on housing. Yeah, great, okay. In which case, I'll leave it to Teresa, you and Jason, sorry, Teresa, Alison and Jason to coordinate an appropriate date for that, but I think that would be very useful, yes.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other members who wish to make any points? I'm seeing none, in which case we have, with only a few technical glitches, managed to navigate our hybrid meeting. So thank you everyone for your patience and contributions today. And I look forward to seeing you after June the 21st, when this will no longer be required. So without any further ado, I am formally telling you the next item 14, is that the next meeting will be on the 15th of July. And then I will close the meeting. So thank you very much for your time today and have a lovely rest of your days. Cheerio.